Hi everyone, welcome back. I was recently asked by a friend to help her paint some gold entwined wedding rings, so I thought I'd do a demo to show how I actually approached the subject. Initially I printed off the rings and just onto some printer paper and then traced them in pencil, and once I'd got those lines down, as you can see here, I'm going over in black ink. Now you need to take it steady because obviously we will be using those lines to use as an indicator for when we come to transfer the tracing onto the watercolour paper that we're going to use to paint the rings. So here I'm taking it steady. You can turn the paper around. I mean, you don't have to stick the paper, just because it's landscape or portrait, keep it that way. Turn it round to make it easier for you to get those lines nice and neat. Same for when you come to do any painting, to be honest. I've just speeded it up here so that you can see me working all the way round. Then once that's done, take a smooth piece of paper, something smooth, put that down on the board and then turn the paper over, get a soft pencil. I started with an HB, but for me it wasn't enough, so I changed to a 2B. You'll see me change here in a minute. And go over, you can just see the lines through the in the image through the paper, so just go over it, a bit like you used to do at school when you're doing tracings and things like that. Just go over everything so that you've got a good covering of the graphite from the pencil on the back of the drawing, so that when that's all done you can flip it back over, use the watercolour paper that you're going to be using, which I have here, and then lay your tracing or your transfer with the graphite side down and position it where you want, and then stick it down with a little bit of masking tape just so that it doesn't move too much while you're transferring the image. And then using, I used an HB pencil, which is what I tend to use for most of my normal sketches, and then I slowly went over those ink marks that I had done earlier, and again taking my time, trying not to move the paper against the watercolour paper, so try and keep everything nice and still, and occasionally lifting it up to make sure that the transfer lines are going down clearly onto your watercolour paper. Now you have to be careful, don't press too hard or you'll end up with almost an embossed image, so your paint might sink into those lines when you come to do the painting, which is something you probably wouldn't want. So I've just speeded it up to get through it because it can take a little while, but you can see I'm checking from time to time, and that's all done. So here's the transferred image, and everything looks okay. So here's the image on the paper. I'm using 2 small pots of water. You can use whatever you like, but I personally prefer to use small pots of water, one for clean my brush in basically, and the other to pick up clean water for the paint. I'm using 2 brushes, a size 4 and a size 6. The ones I like to use are from a company called Rosemary & Co, and that's my personal preference. You use the ones that you like, but you'd need 2, one small, one medium. Here's my palette that I'm using. It's Cotman Watercolours. It is actually the full set. I've cleaned out 3 areas. So I'm just starting to lay an initial wash down. Now I've chosen colours of warm yellows, which is cadmium yellow, cadmium pale hue, Gamboge hue, and cadmium yellow hue, along with dioxine violet to make the browns and the shadows. You might think it's a bit strange to use purple to make brown, but you mix it with yellow and it makes a very interesting brown. So initially I'm putting on a very thin wash of the lightest yellow. You may want to do a little colour swatch so that you know the colours that you're using, which is the lightest. So you need light, medium and slightly warmer colour. You'll see as I go along, so you'll be able to choose your colours. So I tend to work in layers. So I'm putting on the first layer here. So here I'm using the next darkest, if you like, or medium shade strengths of colour. I mean, if you're only using 2 yellows, just add a bit more yellow to your original colour. And I'm working around, looking at my photograph all the time. Now, I often find that, and it happens to me all the time, the temptation to actually paint what I know is a ring. The best way to deal with it is to paint what you see. Forget it's rings or a tree or a bird or whatever. Just paint what you see. And if you're concentrating on one certain area, just paint that area. Now, putting on paint is part of the journey. Taking off paint is another part. And you can see here that I've lifted out areas to bring back the lightness. I've dried it off. Just use a hairdryer, or if you're patient, just leave it. And I'm now using a smaller brush, and I'm going in with a darker mix again, and this probably has a little bit of that violet in it, dioxine violet, and it creates a sort of a browny gold colour. And here I'm actually painting the marks that the sort of lights and the shadows create on that ring. If you remember what the original picture was like, there was sort of various dark shapes, and it's these shapes that I'm actually painting. I'm trying to forget that I'm actually painting a ring. It's not easy, it does take practice, but it's just paint what you see in the section that you're painting, and just gradually work your way round and take your time. It can be quite a struggle at times, but it can also be quite therapeutic and pleasurable to find out that, you know, when you have a look at what you've done by painting the marks and the shapes, that you've actually got a ring. So I've just speeded it up because it did take a little while. I mean, these things, if you take your time to do something, you know, that you're pleased with, it does take a while. It doesn't happen instantly, so be patient. It may mean that you may need to paint it 2 or 3 times to actually get it how you really want it, and each time you've painted it you'll learn something from it. But here I am just working around with that slightly darker colour, and you can see it's now starting to take a little bit of shape. This is where having 2 different size brushes help. You know, I'm using the smaller brush here, size 4. It's got a nice point on it. Drying it off again. I've cut the process down because it does take a little while to dry. Check with the back of your hand. Don't use the flat of your hand. You have grease on the palm of your hand, and that can transfer to the paper. So the back of your hand will give you an indication of whether that is dry enough. So now I'm having a look here at probably the golden colours. You can see there's different shades and different colours. So I'm having a look in here, and this is more of a golden colour. So I've mixed the yellows that I've got together to create that nice golden feel. Not too thick, so it's still got quite a bit of water in it. And the colours that I'm using are transparent colours. Most of the colours that I like to paint with are transparent, because that then means that it allows colours that you've actually put on your page to shine through. So you can build up layers, yet the previous layers, or the first layers that you've put down, they still sort of come through, but they're slightly altered by the layer that you put on top of them. So here I'm trying to create that sort of goldeny feel that the rings have. Keep looking at the picture. Where is that gold? Where is that sort of warm feeling? Where are the lights? Leave those. Don't paint over those. Dry it off again. And yep, that's dry enough. And I'm going back in now. It's darker again. A bit more Dioxine violet going into it. And you might, when you've mixed the colour on your palette and you look at it, you think, oh no, that just can't be right. But once you start to put that onto your page and you're painting, it is right. It's the colour that you need. And it works so well with the others. Now, if you look here, I put the colour down, I rinsed my brush, wiped it off, picked up some clear water and just dabbed it on my towel that I've got at the side, so it's still damp, and I've just gone along and softened one of those edges, which then makes the colour sort of soften on that edge and merge a little bit. So it's called, so you have one hard edge and you have one soft edge, and it can create quite a pleasant look to what you're working on. There are times you want a hard edge, which is great, and there are times you want the soft edge, and the way to do the soft edge is to put your colour down, clean your brush off, dip it into some clean water, not that it's dripping, just so that it's still got some moisture in there, and then run it along that edge, one of the edges you've just painted, and it will actually draw the paint into that clear water, and you end up with a nice soft edge. If you're not sure how to do these things, have a piece of paper at the side and just practice on those pieces of paper before you actually go for it on your painting. That's what I do. I have a piece of paper at the side of me and I test my colours out before I put them onto my painting. If I'm not sure of the technique that I want to do in a certain area, I use a spare piece of paper and I try that out before I do it for real, to be honest, because there's nothing more frustrating than finding out that you've got this picture in your mind of what you want to achieve, you've got your reference material there, and it just doesn't work, and the colour's not right and everything's just gone wrong. And it's just so disheartening and disillusioning. And I've speeded this up here because, as I said to you before, it did take a while, and you don't really want to sit and watch me paint in real time all the time, surely. It would probably take a couple of hours. So I've just speeded everything up, and here I'm actually continuing to look for those dark areas, those marks on the reference photo that seem to be dark, that go with the colour that I've got mixed. And again, I'm not painting wedding rings here. I'm not painting gold wedding rings. I'm just painting the marks that I see in that image. Also, when it's wet and you've already just sort of put some marks down, you can go back into them, provided they're still damp. But you need to be careful that it doesn't damage the, have a counter effect on what you're trying to achieve. Right, I've decided now is the time to put some shadows in. So you can see here, I'm just gently, with my larger brush, painting the shadows as I see them on the image. I've just got you can see I've just put the image in front of me there. This is Dioxine Violet, neat but diluted. So there's lots and lots of water in this, and I'm just putting it down with my brush. You can see I keep going back for more, and what I've done here is I've put the colour down, then I've dipped into clean water and just sort of smooshed it around and spread it around a little bit, so that there's, you know, you get that sort of ragged edge sometimes in shadows. The thing with painting and with watercolour, it can be done and it's lovely. The thing that makes it interesting is the lights against darks and dark against light, and that's what makes it interesting. And if you can start to achieve that, you'll see a change in your artwork. Right, now I've got all the lights and darks in place in the rings, I've decided to bring that golden colour back. So what I've done here is I've mixed my yellows together to create a lovely sort of golden colour, and just checking with my reference photo, I'm going over the areas that have that lovely golden colour. Now, you must have your painting completely dry. This is where the hairdryer comes in handy. Make sure it's completely dry, and make sure you're using transparent paints. Don't use anything that's opaque, because then you'll paint over what you've put down before. Because if you look at this, you can see that although I'm painting over what we've done previously, it's still showing through, although the colour has adjusted. It's sort of shifted slightly. Right, bit dry it off again. Yep. Right, back to the smaller brush, and going back in with a bit more of that golden colour. I've probably made it a little bit stronger here, but it's still a translucent because they are transparent, because they're transparent colours. So I'm trying to look at the original photograph, and I'm working in to those areas that I feel need more of this golden colour. Just speeded it up here. There we go. You can see where it's the pure colour that I've just put down, how yellow it is, or golden, and then how it looks when it's put over layers of what we've done before. Right, now I'm going back in with a darker colour, just reinforcing those edges. This is where having, you know, a larger brush and a smaller brush, or medium and small, come in handy, because you can switch between the two during the course of your painting. And usually, you know, if you've got more detail going on, you need a smaller brush and tend to hold it closer to the hairs, the brush hairs, you know, on that silver bit at the end, the ferrule. And the bigger brush, you know, you have something that's a bit more chunkier. You can hold it a little bit further away, because you may not need to have that type of control over it. But what I'm doing here, I need that control, so I've gone for a smaller brush and I'm holding it closer to the brush hairs themselves, so that I've got that control. Just speeded it up. Looking for the darks. Can you see how adding those darks in layers, it's now starting to create, you know, a bit of a shape and interest on those rings that are entwined. And all the time I'm not painting gold rings, I'm just painting shapes. I'm painting the shapes that I see in those rings. The only time I did the rings was when I did the drawing. So what I'm doing now is painting the shapes that I see within the photograph of those rings. and a lot of it is manipulating the paint, you know, putting on and taking off. And you know, you can determine how much paint you apply by the amount of water that you add. So if you want something sort of fairly strong, and you know, you need a thick creamy paint, so you have less water, and that usually happens towards the end of the painting, once you've got all your layers and the underpainting, if you like, in place. Now I'm going back to put another layer on the shadow. Again, this is Dioxine Violet, just that one colour with not quite so much water as the first time, so it's a little bit stronger. And then what I'm doing here, I've put the colour down, and then I've put some water on my brush, and I'm just sort of swooshing it around, blending it with the water, basically blending it out to nothing, so that we've got the darker colour against the lighter colour on the rings. Doing the same here, and then there we are, a bit of water there, and a bit of water. I'm just sort of swooshing it around to create a bit of interest with those shadows. Okay. I could go on forever with this, it's such good fun. Right, so that's nearly coming to the end. Looking at this, I think I've probably done as much as I feel I can. Just putting a bit of interest in the end. Right, and we're just coming up to the bit that I really enjoy. I've got to dry the page off first, so we dry it off first. And this bit I just absolutely love. A bit of spattering. I love it. It's just one of those things, for me, seems to bring a painting to life, and it's such good fun. It takes a bit of practice, so again, practice, but a bit of spattering can, you know, really make it nice. So I hope you enjoyed it, folks. Have a go, don't despair, just practice, and that's all it takes, just practice. So thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Bye.